Alrighty, hello everyone. Richard Carlton here. Welcome to another awesome day. We are still doing high technology upgrades here to our broadcast studio. I want to say welcome. There we are. Welcome everyone. We are here in Santa Clara. So today is an exciting day. Today is very, very cool. We're going to be doing some exciting stuff about upgrading your FileMaker server to the newest, latest, greatest version. So this broadcast is an everyday occurrence at 1 o'clock. It's in high definition. You should be able to see this on YouTube, Discord, or Twitch, which is really great. If you come down here to live training, you can scroll down here and you can see the upcoming broadcast schedule, which is great. So welcome once again, everyone, for that. Today is best practices for upgrading to FileMaker Server 19. This broadcast is sponsored by FMTraining.tv. We always like to say, this broadcast is brought to you by FMTraining.tv, where we do really great FileMaker training. Now, we have on-demand video training, which is where you can buy the video course. We highly recommend if you want to support the channel, you come down to one of the bundle purchases and you purchase the bundle. If you would, I always hate it when it does that. So you can buy the bundle that you see right here. A complete bundle which includes everything in it, or you can buy a video only bundle which covers the videos. So anyway, the daily training right now is live, but if you want a coherent, organized set of content, that's where you're going to get it right there. So once again, fmtrain.tv and purchase one of the bundles. We have individual courses. We don't sell them individually anymore, just because there are some people going, well, why don't you sell individually, right? Well, mostly because there's like 20 courses, and we're tired of trying to write individual products for each one and SKUs for each one and a website for each one. It's really a lot of work. So you would rather me broadcast live and train you on really great stuff, and that's what we're doing. So Jacob Taylor, are you there somewhere?
Yes, I am.
Jacob Taylor is there. So we're going to transition to Slack. So today's broadcast is, it's a lot of cool things, but one of the things it is Jacob teaching us how we're going to be doing the FileMaker upgrade and what to think about when that occurs. And now I just have to find Slack and find out where Jacob is actually at. So where is he? This whole thing came about, I mean, you were already doing Server 19 upgrades, but then Claris came out with their recommendation of like, hey, you should like do this, right? And the blogs aren't necessarily bad. They're just exceptionally clipped, or like almost like an executive summary a little bit to some degree. At least the blog entries I've seen are lacking sufficient detail.
Yeah. Well, and this one particularly that we're going to kind of run through today in more and less detail, it covers everything at the basic level, but it won't tell you any strategic decisions that you're making here. It's just, hey, here's steps 1 through 9 for how to rip FileMaker server off of the computer and sort of throw it back on again really quick. So if you have anything, if you have a particularly complex installation or anything like that, it's not. I mean, it gives you the basics, but it's not going to really cover you. A tiny bit of background here. I guess I should actually open the engineering blog itself. So basically, Claris, I guess maybe, is it 2 months ago? I'm going to say that and then be wrong probably when this loads. But a couple months ago, they decided to start publishing blog posts, and they started with, one of those, hey, here's what we're doing. You guys have seen some of this content functionally, not like we're covering it as they're covering it, but just because if you've been to the live streams, obviously Nick has covered some of the performance optimizations. That was a recent stream. Today we're going to go over upgrading FileMaker server. We might do some of this cloud stuff later. I don't know. We're not like trying to follow it, but it's really nice actually. I've been kind of excited that they obviously, you can see June 5th is the first one. I've been excited that they started this actually because one of the things I have had sort of a bit of a challenge with since I've been working here is the lack of communication from engineering at Claris. It's kind of, Richard can go down there and maybe talk to them sometimes, and he says, they don't like that very much. But it's really
it's really helpful, and they really hate it when I do it because they think that I'm circumventing their process. Because what they want to do is they want to spoon feed the engineers down there exactly what management wants them to hear. And I go down there and I directly connect the end users and developers to the engineers. The engineers are like, holy shit, this is great information. And then they find out about me and they throw me out of the building. Literally, that's the story. So, and And so they feel like they're losing control, but all I'm trying to do is connect their people who build the product to the people who use the product. I guess that's a bad thing. And so as a result, the engineers have been missing me amongst other people, not just me, but I'm sure it's other people too. And so this is their way of trying to vet out or push out knowledge that they feel is not getting out to the public, right? Or whatever, right? So that's this blog. So this blog stuff is really good. I enjoy it because it helps verify. Like, for example, in this first one down here on June 5th, they went back and said, oh, by the way, we recommend Anchor Buoy, right? And so I was like, oh, thank God. I love it when someone comes back and says, oh yeah, we love you. So there you go. So anyway, go ahead, Jacob.
Yep. And so kind of in line with that, it's I would say the most fantastic option possible would be if users could speak directly to engineering. But as a stand-in, I will take sort of official endorsed blog posts coming out of the engineering department on their website. That's fine. I'm totally okay with that. And actually, the most recent one, the Claris ID authentication one, I just posted in our internal chat system because it was a problem I was working on earlier this year. And so they have, one of the reasons I like this is because I email them all the time asking them questions and, hey, how do we do this? What are you guys expecting if we're going to do this or that or the other thing? What are the implications for various configurations and what do I need to know? And it's honestly, it's really nice to have engineering be able to post out and say, all right, here's the canonical answer to a common question that people are going to run into. That's really valuable. Even if today we're maybe just looking at upgrading a FileMaker server from a previous version, still, it's excellent information to have. So on this topic, a couple things, kind of still meta level before we get into any of the actual steps here. FileMaker server, all versions technically, but certainly FileMaker server, which is relevant today, 16 and 17 platform versions both go out of support at the end of next month. So you all want to know that. That doesn't mean that your stuff's going to randomly explode or turn itself off or anything like that. But what it does mean is that Claris will no longer be supporting it, which means any security problems they might find, bug fixes you might be hoping for in the shipping version of the product, etc. That's not happening anymore as of September. And so probably whatever version of 16 or 17 that you're on currently is likely to be the last version. So I think server 17 went to version 5, and then server 16 I think is version 4, and so that likely to be that those are the last versions that get released for that. After this, basically sort of after the end of September, I don't think it's the very last week in September. I want to say it's like the 21st or something. Don't quote me on that specific date, but I think it's kind of like the week before the last week. So after that, basically, call it in October, we're gonna have version 18 and version 19. Most of the installations that I do right now are either version 18 or version 19. The 16 and 17 I'll call our special request. Some people buy, for example, a permanent license or something like that. But I haven't done one of those in a while, actually. And we're at the point where we're considering switching over to server 19 primarily, which is why we're going to do this stream today. So as far as new customer installs and stuff like that, we have up until this point been doing server 19 installation or server 18 installation, primarily. And the reason for that is because with the release of 19, Claris has transitioned to this new quarterly release cycle. And so theoretically, the version 19 that got released this spring, both FileMaker Pro and FileMaker Server, FileMaker Go, etc., are the last version that ever gets released. And so we're just going to get, patches from now on, basically, that'll have both bug fixes and new features in them on a more regular, approximately quarterly release cycle. So we haven't rolled everyone over to that just yet. And the reason for that actually is because we were kind of still waiting on a little bit of clarity from Claris on what the upgrade part of that life cycle looks like. we're going to do this today on 19 because I've not run into any bugs at all actually at this point, outside of add-ons or something in FileMaker Pro being kind of rough edges and stuff like that. But that's part of the new process actually. They would like to be able to release features basically directly to the public, and kind of get feedback on them, kind of in the way that Google used to, where everything was a beta, and so they would release it and kind of get feedback and eventually make it an official thing. I gather it's going to be something a little bit more like that, which is very cool for adding things and then iterating on them quickly. So let's get started, actually. So one of the first things you want to know about an upgrade for FileMaker Server is really what you're going to be doing. The funny term I created for this was repaving, like you're taking the roadbed completely off and then putting a new road down, right? So the overarching kind of concept here with upgrading between major versions on FileMaker Server is whatever the old version is, you're going to take it all off. Anything that was associated with the old server, you get rid of it, basically. So when you install a previous version of FileMaker Server, you'll end up with, FileMaker Server and all its little bits. You might end up with Java on the computer. There are, if my memory serves, 3 plugins to Internet Information Systems on Windows that don't obviously come on Mac, and those also get pulled off actually. So you kind of, FileMaker Server is supposed to be the only thing running on the system, and so you pull it back to that point. There's nothing on it. It's just Windows. You'll end up with IIS still sitting on there, but that's it. Well, everything else gets
should
stripped.
You just like format it, right, and not try to uninstall
that's a perfectly valid way. We do that functionally. We do that with our Amazon servers actually. I avoid in-place upgrades, not because like it doesn't matter. You can take the stuff off and then you put the new stuff back on, and that works fine. There's no real issues with that. It actually takes about the same amount of time to just for example, in Amazon, to just completely launch a new server and bring the database over. So we just do that, and then you get a clean slate every time. But if you're dealing with an in-office server or something like that, right, you may or may not actually have that capacity to just wipe the thing and basically throw it out and get a new one, kind of. And so in that situation, kind of the general concept is you're going to strip everything that FileMaker brought in off, do any kind of Windows updates, for example, or Mac updates if that's the platform that you're running on, and then put the new FileMaker Server on. That's
Okay, so there was a quick licensing question on the Twitch side, and I just want to respond to that real quick. Michael, something that I guess you said, Jacob, and I guess Michael misunderstood or misinterpreted. I don't know what he said. You said that tripped him. But he says, the question is, does that mean if I buy FileMaker 19, I will get lifelong updates for free? And I'm pretty sure that there's no license that gives you updates for free for life, right? So you can either buy an annual subscription, which is pretty inexpensive in general relative to other things. And that is where you pay every year, and then you always get you can use. But when you buy, if your license is current with FileMaker, and you buy, say, for 5 people, Claris doesn't really care what version of FileMaker you use. Okay, if you use an unsupported version, they don't want you bitching and complaining to them that it doesn't do something you want it to do. But technically, let's just be straight about this. If you have 5 people in your office and you pay for 5 licenses every year, and those 5 people are using FileMaker 7, Claris does not give a shit, okay? It's money in the bank. You got 5 people using the product they created. That's totally cool, okay? It really is. Are they going to help you install 7? Are they going to give you the installers for 7? No, no, and no. But legally, they're totally good with what you do. Now, that being said, you can buy a perpetual license, which we don't generally sell too much of, or you buy an annual license. The annual is as simple as it's like 1/3 the price of perpetual. You pay it every year. You get all the updates for the year. After a year, if you decide 1 year you don't want to renew it, then you need to uninstall the software. Claris doesn't uninstall itself yet. but it does notify Claris that you're being a bad person, and they are aware that you're being a bad person, and they have more recently been a little bit more judicious and aggressive about dealing with people who don't renew. And so they can just blow it up, or you can get a note from Apple legal team saying, hey, you're still using something you haven't bought. The other license is a perpetual license, which at a basic level is like it's a 1-year subscription. It kind of, right? So what it is that you pay 3 times as much as you would for an annual, but you own it and you still get updates for a year. So both of them, you get updates for a year, but the subscription, if you don't renew, you have to uninstall. The perpetual license, you get to keep it, but then you go out of date. Does that make sense? You don't get the updates, etc. So that's really the license thing. I want to hit that so everyone's on the same page on that. Very, very, very important. So on the server install, obviously you're going to want to make sure, if you care about your server staying up to date, you want to make sure you have a license for it. The minimum license really is a 5-pack. I call it a 5-pack. Claris doesn't call it that. They call it 5 seats for the, I guess, the seat of the person, of the people, of their butt that they can sit in your software, I guess, seats, right? But for me, it's like a 6-pack of beer or a 12-pack of beer or whatever it is. And I'm not even a big beer drinker, but you get the idea. Most people understand that. So hopefully that helps Michael a little bit. It's a common question. That's why I'm hammering it. And then from my perspective on Jacob's thing, I'm going to let Jacob run with this, but I always prefer to repave the entire server, operating system and all, because sometimes you try to uninstall something and you don't get all the little bits, and that little bit that you miss causes a problem on the reinstallation of the new software. And if you have problems after you install software, in the back of your mind, you're never going to quite know if a repave would have actually prevented the problem. It's in the back of your mind, it's this doubt. It's like little doubt in the back of your mind, right? So anyway.
Yep. Yeah, and we in our own internal process, we have something that helps with that, but you can never guarantee it. So I would say that in general, if it is an option available to you, the best practice would be whatever's closest to throwing away the server and getting a new one, which is to say, yeah, wiping out the hard drive completely and putting fresh whatever, Windows, Mac, whatever you have on it. So so they have their little steps here, which basically for 99% of people is going to be steps 1 through 9. They also have how to upgrade the worker machines in here if you have a WebDirect worker configuration. I have dealt with one customer so far that has that, so not super common. So one of the main things that you do before, so I told you the meta is take it off, clean everything up, put it back on again.
Can I ask a question real quick? What is meta? Because that is a new terminology. My son used that, and I had no idea what the hell he was talking about. And I know some people here are going,
I think it's short for meta. I think it's short for meta narrative.
And so
it's like the story arc.
Okay, so for really stupid people, this is like the summary, kind of, or
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because I'm really
there's like the overarching idea. We're gonna strip it. We're gonna clean the server. We're gonna put it back on. Okay. That's the meta.
Michael Gravel, why upgrade? Any big advantage? I guess the question is why upgrade? Well, it depends on what you're upgrading from, Michael. If you're on FileMaker 7, I could list a million reasons to upgrade. If you're on 15, a million reasons. As you get closer to the current version, there's less reasons other than the fact if you put it off long enough, it will be much more painful. I just shot a video on this for everyone, and basically the analogy, I'm going to hit another one, and I'm not cutting Jacob, gets all the time he needs on this, but the issue is that if you put off the upgrade and you're on, just imagine they were a penguin. Here, I'm going to help you all folks out here briefly. I'm going to use my hands. Anyone played Club Penguin? My kids played Club Penguin when they were younger, and the penguins are let's just pretend they're all at the North Pole for the lack of a better idea. All right, so the Club Penguins are at the North Pole. They're all together. They're having a great time. The North Pole, the ice there, just is a version of FileMaker you're on. And every spring and summer, whatever, part of the ice breaks off. In the summer, it melts a little bit. Then it freezes again in the winter. And then some of the penguins are stuck on the part that breaks off, and it floats away. And the penguins That's your version of FileMaker you're on. And the current version is the one at the North Pole. And so if you're on 18 and it breaks away and it floats away and it's 50 yards away, 100 yards away, quarter mile away, it's pretty easy for you being the Penguin, to swim to the new one. It's pretty easy to upgrade because there won't be that horrifically many changes. If you stay on version, say, 16, and that iceberg, piece of ice, keeps floating down the Atlantic, it's going to get smaller. And things will quit working with it, and eventually you'll be way down towards the thousands of miles away, and it will eventually melt to nothing, and then the Penguin is floating in the Atlantic Ocean with nowhere to go. And you only have to either drown and die, or you can swim all the way home. And like I said, I ran into people that asked me, hey, can you upgrade me from FileMaker 5? And we said, your Penguin's dead. You need to build a new Penguin up at the North Pole. It's too far to swim. It's just too far to swim. The guy, his iceberg was already at the South Pole, and he had to get back to the North Pole and swim the entire way with the Penguin. Penguin's not going to make it. So understand that the farther you get away from it, the harder it is for you to swim back. Okay? And when I say harder, that's time and money. If you're a Jacob person, you're doing it yourself, it's time. If you're a fancy executive somewhere and you don't know anything about technology except how to plug it in the wall, then you're going to have to pay someone. You're going to have to pay them more to swim your Penguin back home. So just think about the ice and how far you want to be away. At RCC, the servers are never more, like if we have any 18 servers, they might upgrade to 19 if Jacob's bored, but they might wait to 20 or whatever the hell they're going to call it. Okay, our 17 servers already went through a transition. We don't let it get two away. One away is okay, but two away is too far. So I just wanted to handle that because people are saying, why should I upgrade? Because you're going to kill your Penguin if you wait too long, right? Is one reason. There are specific features you might want, but the big one, the overarching one, is that your Penguin is going to die, okay? And then you're going to have to write a big check to rewrite your software from scratch. Rewrite the whole thing. Erase it, start it from scratch. If you wait 20 years to do it. So, anyway, sorry. Right?
No problem.
I mean, Jacob. We could put little penguins behind Jacob in the video, and they go in the future. And those are all the penguins that died on the way. Yeah. So.
And I can talk about the broader argument for that as well. It really has nothing to do with FileMaker. That's a good coverage of like why to upgrade FileMaker and kind of specific to the FileMaker software and the platform and how it's changing over time, and you don't want to get too far behind, sort of. But one of the main I'll say really bad actually production issues that some of our customers run into by not upgrading is they'll do, for example, they leave their Mac updates on automatic, which I wouldn't necessarily, obviously you should install them, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, especially on the server actually. It matters less so on FileMaker Pro, but all things aside, because most software generally on computers is going towards automatic updates. FileMaker is, at least as far as I'm aware, not there yet, either for Pro or for server. You want to be careful about being too far behind in that your operating system will outstrip its ability to run the version of FileMaker that you need. And this has happened with, for example, older versions of server that of like Windows Server that don't run, the newer versions of FileMaker won't run on them or something like that because they demand a feature that's not present on some of the older versions. You can end up with exactly the same problem where, was it FileMaker Server, I think 16, which is supported until the end of next month, definitely doesn't run on Catalina at all. And it's because it doesn't know anything about the new security stuff that they have introduced. That's Mac OS X Catalina, the current version. There's going to be a new one coming out shortly. But that version of it, it's not even the issues with 32 bits versus 64 bits that people have run into with that operating system. Some of the security stuff, just FileMaker Server 16, for example, doesn't run. It won't start. It crashes on launch. And so we had a customer this year not update their FileMaker Server, but they updated their Mac on the server and didn't have a business for 3 days, basically, until they figured out that that's what the issue was. So right, the databases were fine, et cetera. So it wasn't a data risk like that. But obviously, if your whole business is inside of the FileMaker platform and it's down, yeah, for the time being, you don't have a business. So you can run into issues like that. That's on the outside of the FileMaker platform. That's why I would suggest keeping up to date generally. Like Richard said, we usually hang back a version, and our main server, the one that pays me, usually hangs back a version. But the rest of them, they're current. They're on 19. So.
Yeah, the one that pays us is on 1804 because we want to get paid and we don't want to run the risk that Claris is just going to beta test my paycheck with their software. Nothing personal, but
Correct.
I only want 1704, 1705 server, 1605 server, 1804 server, 1905 server, whatever, right? I don't want the server that's going to cause me not to get a paycheck because our payroll is tied into FileMaker, which is tied into a server that is exploded into little bits, right? So, I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but screw the penguins. I want a paycheck, right? And if if you want to make it simple, you don't get paid if it blows up, okay? Think about that. So, anyway.
Yep. So, getting back to the actual sort of steps here, one of the first things that you want. No, I know, it's fine. And this is all good information for people because, like I said, the strategic information that we're talking about, both the outside environment, the FileMaker platform, it's not in this document at all. Like, right, you can see on my screen here, pull your SSL certificates out, look at your plugins, stuff like that. I actually want to note a couple of these things. Obviously, I've linked the document in both of the chats. You all can read it. If you want to read it afterwards or while we're, read along at home sort of thing, that's all fine. A couple things I want to pull out because they need expanded on is the plugins specifically. If you're on a version of FileMaker platform generally older than 18, so if you're probably 14, 15, 16, and 17, those will all upgrade just fine to 18 or 19 without, server operating system and those sorts of challenges aside, database stuff wise, those will go just fine. One thing that you will run into though with an upgrade of that distance, as Richard was talking about, don't stick too far behind, is that the plugins, the way that they work has changed basically with version 18. They require a digital signature from the author or they won't load. I think there's an override in FileMaker Pro specifically for that, where it'll pop up and be like, this thing's not signed, whatever, and you can click override. That override doesn't exist on the server. So if you use server-side plugins in your SASE script, server-assisted script execution, your scheduled scripts on the server, or you're doing perform script on server from inside of FileMaker and it uses a plugin inside of one of those scripts, you need to be careful about that upgrade for two reasons. One is if you try and do this and then don't update the plugin version, it probably won't load on the server. And so whatever those script steps are will not do anything. It's the short version. The other thing is that with that time distance between the plugins, a bunch of them have changed the plugin command names and stuff like that. So you have to go check that all your scripts still work. That's you want to do that anyway, but it bears specific notation because with that signature requirement change, also a bunch of the plugin authors, just in my observation, changed a bunch of the commands as well around that time, because it was one of those, well, everything's going to break, might as well do the changes we've been waiting on sort of situation, cleanups and stuff like that. A lot of it's improvements that we would like, but right, it'll break your stuff. So just watch out for that. The other thing is if you're coming from a version older than 17, which was the first version that supported these license certificates, that'll be new to you. In the server installer, it asks you for that. So just check out for that. You'll have a license page that you'll get either from us or from Claris or whoever you buy your licensing from. At the very top of that page, it's got your key, your license key ID and all that stuff, and downloads for 18 and 19. it'll have a download license certificate button. You just need to hand that both to FileMaker Pro if you're going to be installing that, or to the FileMaker server installer. At this point, you won't, actually with 19, they don't even ask, I think, the organization name, at least on Pro anymore. On server, they still do, but you have to, basically, that's all that you do. You need that license certificate and your like licensed org name, and that's it. That's, you now have a validly licensed FileMaker server. So that part's pretty cool. You will, so one of the things that people run into, and it's just because I do it enough times with the SSL. So if you generated this using the built-in tools, either if you were version 16 or before, it was on the admin console, you could just create a certificate request, I think was what the button said, and you'd fill out all the information and it would do that, and then you'd go find it. And then you can do that with the FMS admin command line utility in 17 and newer. You may have been able to do that in 16 too, I'm not sure. But it was on the admin console before, so that's where most people did it. There will be a password associated with that key. You'll need that if you don't have it. If you don't have it, you'll need to go rekey your certificate. I believe we, at some future point, once my videos come in for SSL stuff, I think in our video course, I think we cover that. I'm not 100% certain, but I think so. If we need to cover a rekey at some point, we can do that. But just know that ahead of time, so it'll be a little extra time to get the server up and running. And then of course, right, final stuff. If you're using external authentication, which is if you have a more recent version, you might have integrated with Microsoft Azure, Active Directory, Active Directory Local, Google account sign in. I think Amazon is in there too. Any of that stuff, you'll need to take down some of those details if you don't have them on file to set those up on the other side, because they're not going to be brought over. You're stripping everything off of the server, taking all the settings away, nuking everything all the way out so that it's a perfectly clean install. But that of course means you have an exciting chance to find out what configuration your system relies on that you weren't aware of.
Yep.
So, and you'll find that out when you go to do something and it'll break or not work, or users won't authenticate automatically or whatever, and you'll be surprised. And so then you'll have to go set whatever back up again. You want to document all of those things. Taking it off and putting it back on again is another great a great time to do that, to write everything down. All right, we changed this setting, we added this feature, we turned this on or turned that off, etc. Because most of the on a broad sense, most of the settings are there. How you access them has changed a bit recently, but most of the settings are there between versions, and so you need to look and make sure that you're kind of replicating everything. I find this very humorous that they note this, and it's because it's standard RCC practice to run that command on all of our servers. So for version 17 and newer of FileMaker server, the schedule number 1 is that pre-programmed one that's in FileMaker server, where it will keep 7 days worth of backups in the default backup location on the server. Usually that's C program files, FileMaker server, data backups on Windows, and library FileMaker server data backups on Mac, if you haven't changed anything about that anyway. So it runs at midnight, and it's a keep 7 daily backup schedule. We always turn that off. The reason for that, of course, is because we program in dailies that go 7 places, and hourlies that go 7 places, and weeklies and all that stuff. We put backups everywhere. We put them in the freezer if we can, just all over the place. And so I find that humorous. But if you're running websites, right, you need to turn PHP back on. You need to turn XML back on. You need to remember to do that. With versions after FileMaker Server 18 patch 1, there will be no Java included. So and we went over this when we did the install from scratch, but you'll take Java off at this point if you're on one of those older versions, because you're not licensed to use it anymore, especially if it's an Oracle Java, which is what it came with at that time. But you'll need to like resolve that basically and figure out how to get a different Java. We recommend Amazon Corretto version 8 specifically. That in our experience works great for all the stuff that you need it to. I'm going to demonstrate one thing here also. This is really, really useful. It took, like, I didn't immediately learn this when I started working here. And, I'm sitting there trying to like reprogram in all the schedules and stuff. But if you're setting your server up exactly the same way as it was, but just a new version, what you can do is you can save all your schedules. What that means though, is it's not limited to the backup schedules, for example, because maybe you only have a couple of those and so you don't care that much. If you have script schedules, scheduled scripts that, run overnight or something like that, or run hourly to send emails out, or run every 5 minutes to check this or that thing, which are all really common things that we have. Those can be a pain in the butt to reprogram, and you've got to go find, because when you make them new, you have to go find the user login information that they used for the database and the script name and all that stuff. You can just export that in one step. So that's a huge time saver if you're going between major versions. I'm going to demo this here. So we have a 19 server set up. There's no schedules here really, except for the couple of backup schedules that I've set up. But if you're on 19, 18, or 17, this will look exactly the same. You will go to backups. You will go to backup schedules. Again, this works exactly the same on 17, 18, and 19, and you'll do save all schedules right here. There is a very similar thing on 16 and before. I can't cover, I think, 14, but I think I can cover 15 and 16. I'm going to commandeer one of our customer servers here for just a moment. We have very few 16 servers remaining. But here's this one. They have all their backup schedules right. So you see we're on the admin console. We're on the schedules area. It's very similar, except you click this, the server button, and you'll do save schedules and groups. And it does the same thing. It pulls all the scheduled scripts out and saves them in a little settings file that you can then do the opposite on the new one. Whoops, let me show it. You load all schedules. So, and that brings it right in. You don't have to do anything. It'll kind of reconstitute all the backup schedules, all the script schedules, all that stuff. So we already covered number 2. Yes, one of the best things is you're going to stop everything. So if there are any FileMaker clients connected to the server, you're going to disconnect them. You can also close the file, but in general, I prefer to disconnect and then close, if only to be extra verbose. But very specifically, it's a step that a lot of people like to skip, and I'll just call this out very specifically. Close your databases before you do anything that would stop the database server, for example. So if you're going to use either the Mac command to like stop the database engine, or the Windows like the services panel to stop. You could stop, restart, or start. If you're going to use that to stop the database, you want under all circumstances to close the databases in advance and confirm from the event log file that they are closed. Make sure that all the clients successfully disconnected, all the files got closed, and then you can go about stopping things. The reason I specifically call that out is because if you do not do that, often enough that it's worth noting, a FileMaker server that has been running for a disgustingly long time, because if you haven't had any issues, they probably just kept running for a long time, months, potentially years. In my experience, it will often crash when you go to stop it. And that's nothing to do with FileMaker. It's not a bug in the platform. It's the computer's been running that long and the memory's buggy or whatever. You have basically solar radiation that messes with your RAM and whatever. I don't want to get into the technical details of why that's the case, but I'm totally not kidding at all.
Wait. Solar radiation that gets into my RAM?
Yes. So The short version is when you buy professional server hardware, like might be hosted at a data center, or for example, if you're on Amazon hosted there or something like that, they buy the same thing. There's a memory feature called ECC. What that stands for is error something correction. Someone, I'm sure in one of the chats will correct me as to what the long version of that is, but it's ECC RAM. And what that does is it self-corrects that actually, because memory won't just be perfect forever always. There are various interferences. Yes, some of them solar radiation, basically. Not like sun, but like the other types of radiation that aren't visible from the sun that come down. They will mess up the bits in the running system of your server. And mostly that doesn't cause issues. It can cause weird data issues and stuff like that. But I have just found when things run for a very long time and you stop them, especially FileMaker server tends to crash. And so you want to close your files first, because otherwise if you don't do that, you go to stop the server and it crashes instead of having your files closed. And then you have crashed backups, and so it's not just a nice little clean upgrade that you're doing, you also have to do a backup restoration, and that's annoying because you probably told everyone right before you're going to do this upgrade, hey, finish your stuff up, and then they go home for the day or something like that, and it's an awkward position to be in, and you would like to avoid that. So if you close all the databases first, if it crashes, it doesn't matter.
Hey,
it's totally irrelevant.
Ken asked the question, so should I restart my FileMaker server on a regular basis, question mark? My answer,
yes. I'd say yes, insofar as you're probably going to do that if you're regularly installing operating system patches, but not as a specific, I'm going to go restart FileMaker server every week. I would say if something like that becomes necessary, that's a telltale sign that something is wrong. Yes. Not necessarily with FileMaker, maybe with FileMaker, but it bears additional investigation on your part, because you shouldn't have to do that.
Correct. Yeah.
So,
we don't. The answer to that I would give you is no. Jacob basically just said no, but he said that you'll probably restart it more often, especially on Windows if you're getting a lot of Windows updates, right? Windows gets a lot of updates, right? So, and if you're on Amazon, listen, this is very X-Files. I have to read up on this. I don't not believe Jacob Taylor, but I've not heard that aliens will use radiation to jam your RAM on your server and blow it up. So.
Yes, they do that. No, it's not aliens.
Well, I mean, I know that they have solar flares, and that can hit they can hit distribution lines, big power lines, and cause problems and stuff, right? But I'd not heard that it actually monkey with the RAM on a computer, so that's interesting.
Yeah, it does. We were concerned. I'd have to go look at what year it was. It was one of the ones during this political cycle. Their scientists told us the sun was going to do something that was basically going to be a giant radiation blast to Earth. And I didn't see much come of it, but they were very concerned about the effect on communications networks.
Yes.
Not like blowing a server out or something like that, but it was going to be an extra level of blasting on your server's components. If you think about it, one of the things that they have to armor against when you're sending a computer into space, for example, is that radiation. Yep. We generally benefit from the Earth's our little bubble that protects against that, but it's not an absolute protection. It just reduces it very greatly. So people that run data centers, the roofs of those things have materials in them that shield it. That's why you think of if you're going to run Ethernet, for example, Ethernet cabling outside, there's shielded cabling. It's the exact same thing. If you just let the computing device be exposed to the environment like that, it would degrade really rapidly, actually. And so the same thing is kind of happening here. To directly address Ken's question, I know, right? I'm being X-Files over here. To directly address Ken's question about fighting off solar radiation. If you think that's a very specific concern of yours, you go buy more expensive computing hardware for your server. You buy something with ECC RAM. You buy an actual server, not a Mac Mini, a desktop computer that you kind of use for hosting or something like that. You'll pay the money if you think that's a competitive risk. Most people start to get concerned with that when they get big enough that the money makes sense. To spend a little bit to mitigate a risk like that.
Like if you're going to lose $1 million a day because you're offline, then you need to belly up to the bar and buy some big hardware. So that's fine.
Yeah, this stuff here, C, D, and E are basically what I've covered already. Back up everything. One of our processes for doing specifically the uninstall part is we go in and we actually rename this FileMaker server directory. Or if it's over here on Mac, it's that one, to keep the old stuff. That does two things. Any chaff that might be left over when you run the uninstaller will be sitting there in that folder still, basically, right? So if you've modified any files or settings or any of that stuff that's just would be hanging out because it didn't come with the FileMaker server installer, then that stuff will still just be sitting there in front of you. So we renamed that. Richard mentioned this about there being some weird stuff that might mess up a future installation. That's one of the reasons that we renamed that. My understanding is that was a much bigger issue in older versions of FileMaker server. The installers at this point seem to clean themselves up pretty well, but they do not remove everything. So they don't. Obviously, actually, they don't delete your databases, for example. They don't delete any of the web stuff that has been changed, plugins for the database engine, web presentation engine, any of that. None of that stuff goes away. So they just leave it chilling. So if you're going to go from an old version and try and install over top or something like that, be careful. Get that stuff out of the way. Otherwise, you can run into some weird issues, actually. So, like I said, the last thing you're going to do is you're going to stop the FileMaker server, and then, you're going to uninstall it. And this is a really good list, actually. So this is much more important on Windows than on Mac. On Mac, if you just run the uninstaller, it will take everything off. But to be clear, because it's different than other things that you would do on a Mac, you don't drag the folder into the trash or something. That will not uninstall it. You don't want to do that. There is an uninstaller in the folder itself in library FileMaker server. On Mac, it'll say, if you're 16 or something, it'll say FileMaker server 16 uninstaller, and you'll run that, and it'll cleans up after itself. That's the point. On Windows, it will not take off any of this other stuff. So if you run the FileMaker server, you go to add remove programs here, or programs and features on newer versions, and you run uninstall on FileMaker server, it will not take Bonjour off. It will not take the URL rewrite, application request routing, or external cache. They also specifically recommend removing any Visual C++ library stuff that got installed. So you have to go into programs and features and strip all that stuff off. It takes a minute. But once that's done, you'll need to, at some point, restart also. As they say, this is a good time to do any system updates. So if you're going to do big patches in Windows or new versions of Mac OS X, basically after you've removed FileMaker server is a great time to do that. Let's see. Yes, that's correct. Okay, cool. You're going to remove Java at this time as well. Just a very quick overview of that. Oracle years ago bought Sun Java, which is the Java you guys probably know that was the desktop application that would run stuff. Originally, it could run stuff inside of your browser, but kind of for security reasons, they took that functionality out, actually. And so in the last couple of years, Oracle, again, the company that owns Java now, decided that they wanted to license all usages of Java that are not basic desktop use. So any kind of server, any kind of command line, anything that's not just you're the end user running some random stuff that your company uses or whatever, and your company is going to pay for it in that case anyway. They want you to pay licensing fees for that. and that's fine, whatever. But Java itself is like a programming language, and it has a specification, and it's actually a bunch of it is open source. And so you can go find Javas from other companies. There's like a bunch of them, actually. So again, the one that we recommend for this, if you're going to install it again afterwards, because you need specifically WebDirect or Web Presentation Engine, which WebDirect relies on, we recommend Amazon Corretto version 8. It's been quite stable for us. But at this point, due to that licensing change, again, because otherwise you'd have to pay for it, you'll be removing Java from the system. And then that's it. So in between basically these steps, so you're going to remove FileMaker Server and any of this stuff that might be on there, and maybe install some Windows updates, but because those usually, or Mac updates, because those usually have a reboot associated with them, you're going to end up rebooting in between this, we'll say step 6 and step 7 here. You want to do that anyway. If you're coming into this, say, already up to date on either Mac or Windows updates, that's cool. Reboot anyway, please. And thank you. You will thank me later. There's stuff that doesn't get cleaned out until you reboot the system. So associated with the uninstallation. So you want to do that anyway. Back to the other side, we've come back up. You did any Windows or Mac updates that you were looking to do. You're on, if you're going to do 19, you'll be on Windows Server 2016 or 2019 standard edition, because you need the desktop stuff, the desktop environment stuff. And if you're on Mac, you're going to be on Mojave or Catalina. Yeah, basically those two. Either of those kind of 4 versions of the operating system will work. I've done it on all 4, and it works just fine on all 4. 19 does. So we're coming back up. We have our nice clean system. We've removed everything and rebooted again into whatever update that we're going to be on. You're going to run the installer. I have gone through that in full depth, and so I'm going to skip most of the detail for that. But the short version is you install the software, which with newer versions is mostly clicking next, actually. And then again, just to note that out, with 19, you cannot license the server without that FileMaker certificate, the license cert file. Unfortunately, you can't like double click it and have FileMaker, either Pro or Server, do the right thing where it goes, oh, hey, you gave me a license. It doesn't work that way. You'll need to like, it'll ask you during the installer, hey, give me the license file. And you need to go find it on your computer, wherever it is. So that's just like the main impediment that you'll run into. You'll also set up like the admin console credentials during the installer and stuff like that. Probably set that back up the way it was, or if you're thinking of maybe having more complicated passwords, a reinstallation is a great time to kind of step your game up on that. Have something really crazy that my heuristic for that is that if you can tell me the password over the phone, it's not complicated enough. Hey, Richard, that's funny. What do we tell people? Is that number 3? Does that look familiar to anyone? Is that the feature that we tell everyone under all circumstances? You should change that setting.
They have it. They have it to off too.
So we're going to come in here and toggle that, right? So,
wow.
Yep. I like that though. That's good. It's a good recommendation. I don't want to complain about it, but like Richard says, it shows the difference between best practices and, you know,
other
what
people
might be aspirational.
Aspirational, yeah. That's being very. Yeah, I actually think it is aspirational. It's the preferences that tells you that that people who don't use the product are making some of the decisions for the features. And
yeah,
that's,
I would like it someday. I mean, just to be perfectly clear to everyone who's on stream, I would love it if someday we could actually leave it on. I call it full auto. Just the server starts up, it does whatever. You know, if it crashes or something, it can put the file back together again. If it need, you know, whatever's necessary to make all of those things happen. My dream future is that. Because ideally, for example, what we would be able to do is allow updates for Windows or Mac within the same version to install themselves automatically outside of business hours or something like that.
Yeah.
That would be a fantastic, glorious, ideal, you know, whatever future from an IT admin perspective. We're not there yet, obviously, but that would be great. And so as far as I'm concerned, having it automatically open the databases like that's the default setting is kind of aspirational.
What else we have here besides this? Anything else? Because I do need to land the plane. We're circling the airport, waiting for the fog to clear.
I mean, the summary of all of this is put all the settings back into the FileMaker server. If you're coming from an older version, pre-17, you'll be surprised because a bunch of the stuff that you're expecting to be on the admin console isn't there anymore. And so you'll have to learn probably new ways to make some of those settings changes. For example, actually, I'd say one of the most aggravating that's still not on the admin console, in fact, is the cache size, which used to just be a setting that you would type the number of megabytes of RAM in and hit save. That's great. I really wish that was on the new version, but it's not, so you have to set it via the command line.
And then next week we are going to be doing the Klaus Levin thing, and he does that. You can set it in his missing administrative tool. So.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. And that's a live settings change as well, but that's one of the annoying things. Let's see, they have a couple Mac specific things. Nope, all the rest of this is fairly normal.
We're going to be visiting these docs, these Claris blogs periodically. I've done it before. The problem is with some the first blog they have on their June 5th, you go back to the top, Jacob. That is about 20 hours of video training, at least. And so they do this page and a half and snap their fingers and do this. And I'm glad they did it, but let's just be clear about this. For you to actually learn what's in the very first blog from June 5th on performance is at least 20 hours of intensive video training that we have in our course, and we're even updating it. So it's pretty bad. It's this one line is use anchor buoy and don't use spider, right? Well, that's that's probably 45 minutes, 45 minutes of training right there. So, never mind all the other suggestions that they have. So all the suggestions are great. It's just that it's summarized down to such a distilled level that for someone, like me, I have to actually teach it, train it. It's like when executive CEO says, hey, we're going to build a bridge across this river somewhere, and you're the engineer and also the construction guy who has to pour the concrete and lay it and do all that. You can say, oh, I want a bridge, but if we have to build it, we're talking months of work, right? If you're fast. So with that, I'll cut you loose. Thanks, everyone.
Just stepped up the whole way. Calm, cool, collected. The quarterback, great read, good patience. More importantly, great job up front protecting this quarterback to give you a chance. And that's all you can ask for.
Trying to rally down 10. 9:25 to go here in the fourth. Short motion by Amendola from the left. Brady takes the shotgun snap. Stands in, throws it left for Amendola. Reaches up and stacks a high throw and lands inside the 10. Rolling to the 9. Ball slightly behind him, but Danny makes the grab.